So welcome everybody to our third installment of VectorMind Vortex. We've decided in the beginning of this year to create a space for all the VectorMind users where we can share everything that's new, everything that's happening, and really just help you guys to explore and understand and use the platform better. So I am going to hand over to Brendan Stott, and he's going to kick it off, and then some of my other colleagues will follow.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jackie. And welcome everyone. Nice to see some familiar names. Just to the start, I'm going to introduce some of the team that will be speaking today. I'll be joined by our CEO and founder, Andre Strauss. I perform the role of the executive head of customer solutions. So I work with quite a few of the customers, if not all of them, to define their roadmap, their roadmap and use cases. And we'll also be joined by Josh Walensky, who's the head of our product design. The topic, though, is quite an exciting one for us, and it talks to administrative agentic AI. It's all nice and words that start with A. But effectively, what this is going to cover is really AI doing the work for you. It's admin is something that all businesses have, all users or people within a business have it, and no one really likes to do it. And I think with the advent of LLMs and what we're seeing being released in the market, everyone can really see and is getting. I think what's getting the most excitement is the fact that the amount of work that can be sort of handed over to something like an LLM. But what we're seeing is that we're getting more and more maturity here, and it's actually becoming practical. Andre and Josh are going to show some of that practical stuff, but I'm just really going to talk about some of the concepts and the building blocks that really get you to that. I think the most important thing to differentiate is between an assistant versus an agent. Most tools that users are familiar with are really assistants. It's things that are very much sort of a single input and a single output linked to just one sort of set of knowledge or a single prompt, and it's very heavy in the sense of you have to ask it for something, you have to guide at each individual step. It is quite quick. You get those responses quite quickly, but it is limited in actually performing a function. So typically, some of the most common type of assistants that we see are things like HR policy assistants, where you ask a typical question of what's the leave policy. Now, that's a very good assistant. It offers value, but it's not really doing any function. What we're seeing more and more and progressing into into the last few months is something that's more agentic. Now, agentic, something that's agentic is typically multi-step. It plans and executes something that's more complicated. You're giving it a guidance to do something autonomously without having to say, do this, then that, then that, then that. Historically, in sort of the business context, there'd be things like robotic process automation or workflows where you'd go through a number of gates, but you effectively have to define each individual step and what users are allowed to say yes or no to. Everyone's probably engaged with chatbots historically and got frustrated, and that was because the most common way to design and articulate those chatbots was prior to the introduction of LLMs and specifically agents, is that you have to pretty much define every single path that a user could follow, and you have to say this is exactly how you should respond. Now, an AI agent, you're rather giving it a guidance and a goal to achieve something, but you're letting it achieve that without saying exactly how. It's obviously very critical in the business space to make sure that there's a lot of guardrails around that, and you don't allow it to deviate outside of what it can do. But the power of an agent is that you don't have to guide at each individual step. There's some agents that can work for hours. There's really large ones that can be built and just go and continuously iterate until it gets to the outcome that you want. And it's also something that can be planned and started on its own. So really powerful, and there's quite a few use cases where this can become really functional. Now, in the administrative agentic AI space, what we're talking about here is autonomous agents that can perform administrative functions. And administrative functions are those that are repetitive. They take time out of your day. They don't really offer any sort of intrinsic value, but they have to really be done. Now, the key for something that sits in the space from an agent perspective is that they have to be policy enforced, and you do always want human in the loop. Policy enforced means that it's always following guidance, but it's allowed to follow that policy autonomously. So you're not defining this, then that, then that, then that. You're saying, I want this outcome, and this is how these are the guardrails in which you need to follow it. And within those guardrails and policies, you typically want to enforce that human in the loop. So you distinguish the levels, meaning that you pretty much define how it would behave and operate. So it would start potentially with as just something that is suggestion only, which sits quite far on the assistant side of things, or it can go, okay, now it's an assisted action and it's helping you, and it's very much something that's working alongside a user in terms of how it's operating. And you could go all the way to something that's fully autonomous, where still working within guardrails, but you're letting it go and complete an action end to end, and really just looking at the at the outcome in terms of a review. Obviously, with anything in the AI space, it's really important to have the security aspects managed. So scope credentials, meaning that it can't just go and access any system that it wants. It's an auditable action trail, which is absolutely critical. We've seen some solutions where an agent has been used, and it's very exciting in a demo space, but it then can become quite dangerous. So if you're using an agent to do something that is financial related, so you are using it to capture invoicing details, something as simple as that. If you don't have a full auditable action trail, if someone was to then go and interrogate your ERP system or your general ledger, you aren't able to effectively say exactly how that document was, or how that value was written in there. You've now taken a bit of a risk, because it could be argued that you haven't necessarily done your fiduciary duty, which is obviously a requirement. Along with that, the fail-safe controls and the bounded autonomy that I've spoken about. Now, the business value of this, I think, is quite intuitive. If we talk about things like in the ticketing space, just doing ticket triage, and just something that many users are doing quite often in businesses, to go and look at a ticket, read it, think a bit about it, and then just say, okay, no, this should be a sort of a severity 3, and it should then go and be captured in that workflow. That's something that's often quite manual, but is very repetitive, and is quite a good application of something agentic, because as there's examples where effectively you can resolve quite a few tickets completely autonomously without it getting to a human. There's a number of other aspects here, and Andre is going to go into some demos there. And there's also a strong value here, where by doing these administrative tasks autonomously and using an LLM, there's a huge improvement in terms of SLA response, but also reduction in human error. It can obviously operate 24/7, but more powerfully, it can do something that doesn't kind of rely on sort of the human being tired or having an off day or just getting to that point. So we are seeing quite a few cases where this is performing better than some of the human controllers that we're doing historically. And again, the power of something that's agentic is that it wouldn't necessarily just be limited. It typically isn't limited to just a single prompt and sort of outcome and action. Using domain knowledge or using other sets of tools that we have available in our platform to achieve the outcome. So in that ticket triage use case, you're effectively saying, here's all the information about how we resolve tickets. Here's a full knowledge library. Use this to define what type of ticket is, but also automate the resolution. So a lot of power specifically in something agentic when combining with other types of LLMs. I think the last couple of slides before we get into some of the more exciting stuff are things like governance controls, really critical to make sure that you don't just blindly release an agent across your organization. So you want to maintain the classic technology security standards. So identity and SSO, least privilege and scope tokens, and privilege access management are all very critical just to make sure that it conforms to your existing policies. And going into some of the sort of the deeper aspects like a sealed emergency admin, where there's hardware multi-factor, and then logging and retention. The key for us sort of to guide the implementation of an agent are really to follow the conventional IT release strategy, but in a highly efficient manner. So you still want change management because it's something that has to be that can work autonomously. It's making decisions in the organization. You want to ensure that it's tested and released in a controlled way. There's full review cycles. It's understood exactly how it's working, and there's vulnerability scanning. Obviously, a very critical component to this, and of course the backup and restore part. And again, all of these are typical technology control measures, but we're seeing in the market that because of the excitement around AI, it's quite often that these types of things are forgotten about and just not implemented. I think with that, I'm going to hand over, I believe, to Josh. Josh is going to talk to some of the foundational components and do a presentation on the new release of our Business GPT that should be coming to quite a few of the customers on this call in a very short time frame, and some of the cool and interesting parts that we've introduced there. Thanks, Josh. Over to you.
Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Brendan. I'll try and quickly get my screen going. All right, so I'm going to show some of the, like Brendan shared, of our, it's in beta at the moment, of part of our new studio, but as well as our Business GPT 2.0. And I'm going to take us through a setup of creating one, turning on some of the tools, which is a segue to all the agentic work that's going to be coming off the back of this, and then actually interacting with it. So it would be setting up you set up your credentials, you would choose your different provider types. Obviously, the great thing about the way we've built this is that you can plug in any provider, so you can get the latest and the best providers. So in this case, we just, do this a bit. Put the key, we're going to call this Josh Webinar. Okay. Give it a sec. Cool. I need to save everything. So setting up credentials. There are a bunch of tools that we've started with, a few basic ones, but we can add as many or different ones, pretty ones, not so pretty ones as we go. So just for this one, we'll do an image generation as well. The type, we'll call it again webinar. Cool. You can select the different models. So we just got the model that we just set up for the credentials before this, so Josh Webinar, and these are, I mean, now with how rapidly everything's changing, this is now slightly out of date as well. OpenAI released, I think it was actually last night or the night before, Image 2.0. So they're also doing some incredible work there that we get to leverage off of, which is amazing. And then from here, we've set up our tools, now we're just going to go and configure the assistant with everything that we've set up. Sorry, this doesn't need to be here. This is me clicking in the wrong place. Cool. So we call this Josh webinars. This is the actual assistant. What does it do? And in this case, we'll just leave it blank for now. You are helping me. Demo. Okay, so setting up our assistant. Give it a moment. Okay, so now we are in the agent visualizer and we need to add the LLMs and the tools that we've set up initially. So we're going to go and select the webinar. We're going to select one of the later models. We can see, you know, this model has a couple of tool uses, streaming, reasoning. We're going to go for reasoning fit. I could probably just leave it, go for medium. And then we're going to add that provider. Next, also, if there's any other configurations or if we want to add any other providers, we can do so here as well. For this case, we'll just stick with one. Then on our tools, which tools we want to enable or not enable. So in this case, we'll just turn on web search for this, and let's go with the first image in now, and I'll show something shortly off the back of this. Okay, and obviously we have all our document processing, which we were going to turn on as well, the vector stores, as well as the embedding model, set up everything on the tools. Okay, so obviously a lot of these would come out the box and be configured, and we're working to make this more streamlined, but this is essentially how the assistant would be set up. And now I can go and chat with the assistant. So from this view, let's see. Okay, we'll start with the first thing. What is the weather in Pretoria today? So a lot of this has a bunch of our new UIs. You can see that it's trying to figure out to classify the intent, and there is already given the response, which seems pretty accurate. Looking at this from here, cool. Off the back of this, can you make me an image of what today feels like? Okay, so image generation always takes a little bit longer, but it will pop through in a moment. I'm hoping this isn't too complicated of an image, and then I'll show some more of the, I think, interesting ways that we can interact with this, and by turning on certain tools on and off. So it's nice to see exactly what the LLM or the assistant is doing in this case. So generate the image. Wait a moment or two before I start clicking around. Yeah, but while this is ongoing, if I open in a tab just for demo purposes, so we can also change the instructions from the assistant. So I want to wait for just in case it breaks. It's always the downside of a live demo, but just want to wait for the image to generate to see what is done. I think I've asked for something way too complicated, yeah, which is my own fault. Okay, there we go. All right, so I've even got some of the jacaranda trees, and I think it's a pretty good image. Came out well. So now, if you want to change something like this now, at the start of every reply, tell me I am very good at painting. Cool. So we can save that, and now I'm going to ask. Give it a sec. Cool. So now, can you make me a chart of today's temperatures? Cool. And wrap up and show you one or two more of the really unique functionality that we've got with this. So classifying intent. So it's reasoning, and I'm asking it harder, questions, but there we go. Okay, so now it's given us a chart, right? But if we go back into our config of it, and we go and turn on chart generation. Now, if I come back and ask the same question that we just turned on that other tool, give it a second. It might show a bug for a split second of when it renders, but this is something we know about and we're working on it as well, but it will render as soon as the assistant is done. It doesn't take as long as the image, so I'm not going to keep everyone waiting. So it says it fails to render and the spacing is a little bit off, but it's an interactive chart or graph right in the chat, which is really helpful. And then there's maybe the last one, because I don't want to use up too much time, try and be cognizant of it. So if we're going to add an attachment, so this is a big one. So if we go to our desktop and we go and add a media document, we give it a moment, it's extracting. So with this document, it is it's a whole, how many pages on this? There's 86 pages that it's about to extract. Okay, give me the top 3. Yeah. Okay, might have to wait just a few moments. Okay, it's chunking through the document. I probably should use a shorter one to show you, but it's really nice because we can get quotes out of it. We can extract a lot. I feel like the quality of the extractions from this is significantly better. So if we just attach there, now in the chat, you can also see what documents are added. It's going to now classify intent, search documents, evaluate the results. And while that's running, let me pull open just a certain line from here as well, which, okay, the top 3 summaries, and then give what is this quote in at, and you can add the document as well. So other ways of doing it, just to wrap up. Cool. So this has been a bit of a broad demo of bits and pieces of some of the beta version that we're working on. Well, pushing hard on. So just to wrap up, show you some of the capabilities, but yeah, thank you. This is a short and sweet one.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, so the really important thing to remember is, again, what is the value proposition of at least our VectorMind platform. So this is the Business GPT version 2 tool. It's already available with certain customers in beta. We expect it to be in everybody's instance by the end of this month. But the most important aspect is that capability and functionality lives inside the platform, meaning that, number one, the content safety of all generations is virtually guaranteed. So we would block all malicious content out of the entire system. Secondly, and probably the most important, is that none of the data is shared with any third-party system or international organization. It stays in your tenant. So the functionality sits inside the platform, meaning that you get the quality control, you get the security and the safety. So the big inflection point that's happened this year with AI generally is moving from assistants to agents. Like Brendan introduced, we're going from where it is really helpful to have available information and essentially all knowledge in the world available at an assistant level. The real big shift this year is where AI starts doing some of our work. So I'll show you now how that looks in practice and what it could mean for day-to-day business. Specifically, when we talk about administrative tasks, I think it could be extremely helpful if you can have more time for coffee and have to do less tedious tasks and repetitive tasks. So the move is essentially moving from a capability that is extremely handy to something that actually does our work for us. And that's a big game changer. We already see in certain business functions, things as an example like quality assurance and testing and QA, document generation, that we get 3-4 times more productivity out of our teams per day because we've got these agents starting to do work. So I'm going to go through a quick journey here. We don't have a ton of time, and essentially show you our agent platform and how it would work. So the concept of an agent is that you give it an end task. So let's say the task is I want to essentially get to an end result of a bank recon, or I want to get to the end result of a VAT recon or something like that. And then the agent will use its tools at its disposal to actually fulfill that work. Now, that's really exciting in the sense that we now have the ability to actually perform a lot of these functions, and we give it different tools. So let me show you a couple of examples of what that could look like. So if I go in here, this is our agent platform, and it consists of a marketplace where we have pre-built things like, let's say, WhatsApp or Asana for project management, or it's got a ER connected to Dropbox or GitHub or Jira or any of these platforms that we use. We would then provision it into our agents, and then we would start setting them up. So our agents got a tool and a skill. So you would say my skill, and I'll show you an example here. Here is an agent that we built to do restaurant bookings. So we say, here we go, and this is a restaurant that some of you guys in Pretoria might know. Let me just go in there. The agent will do bookings for Fontaine restaurant, and we describe it. Your role is to help customers do bookings. They're very Afrikaans, so we want to respond in Afrikaans, and these are the rules, and it basically gives the instructions. Then we say, okay, great. So you must make the booking. The tools at your disposal is, in this case, connected to a system called TastyIgniter, which is the back end that they're using to manage their tables. Okay, and then we give it a skill to say, let's just go to that skill. It basically describes, okay, you handle restaurant bookings, and the skills are very generic. So now we set that up. So we get it a tool, we give it a bunch of skills, we connect it to a provider of AI, we give it some memory, and then in this case, we connect it to Infobip, which is WhatsApp. So this is now an agent that I can communicate with. So I can go into this thing and say, I want to book a table for tonight. Now, the agent should be able to ask me what time, okay, how many people, and do I have a preference inside or outside? So I'll say 1900 hours, ideally outside, and it's for 6 people. Right. Now, this you can also do on WhatsApp. It is live. Okay. And my name is Andre Strauss. And now this will go do the actual booking in the back end. Okay, hang on. Let me just get my number there. Right. Now you'll see there it's busy doing a bunch of connectors. It's checking availability. Okay. And it says there's actually, yep, your booking is confirmed. So if I go into this back end, I will now be able, if I've got access to this, I'll be able to go look at the actual bookings. There we go. And look at the reservations. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Okay, I don't actually have access, and it makes the booking for me. So now we can see how a simple administrative task gets automated. And it's quite easy to create an agent. I'll go to, and this could be a financial controller agent, and we can say you handle debtors inquiries using Xero bookkeeping, and then inquiries. Let me just fix my spelling. Okay, I'll create the agent, and now I can start connecting it. So what I want to do is over here, I want to connect Xero bookkeeping. I want to connect whichever language model. This is fine. I'm going to use Anthropic. Great. I can add quality controls to check if it's safe. I will give it a skill. So I'll activate skills, and I'll say, okay, is there a skill that maybe handles something like financial management? So I'm going to activate that. There we go. And I'll publish this agent, and it would start working immediately. So the principle is going to be that we believe you will have 10, 20, 30, 40 agents doing individual tasks really well, really quickly, and really accurately. Now, what that looks like in a real practical example for day-to-day business is, let's look at these couples. So here's a bank recon agent that's connected to, in this case, it's connected to F&B. So where's the tools? It's connected to F&B and Xero and email. I've got a FICA one that does customer onboarding. I've got a SARS VAT recon one, and I've got a debtors follow-up one. Now, how the agents will be used is you won't always use a chatbot. In fact, the best agents is hidden behind the UI. So if I were to go in here to the bank recon, this is how people are used to using bank recons. All the differences behind this sits now that agent I showed you, and I can say, okay, go do my bank recon. It will quite literally run through the transactions, and it will go auto match using different rules that we set up, and it will show me exceptions. So you see immediately there's an exception. We couldn't get that. Now what we'll do is we'll either do a journal directly into Xero, or we'll escalate to someone to handle that. Similarly, this one, we couldn't match it. And the idea here is that you want to automate 80 to 90% of your day-to-day admin tasks using agents. So another one would be FICA. So in this instance, we want to check for, now behind this, for those who you already deal with us, you know we've got Iris. So Iris powers this use case. Iris is connected to the agent. We'll run the FICA test. It will one by one go through and check the ID document, check the proof of address. Is it within 3 months? Look at if there's any sanctions that we want to look at and do a score, and then we can either approve it or whatever, and then it gets posted. Similarly, if we do something which is something that our customers on the score always pays on time. So I'm referring to other people's debtors that don't pay on time. This is literally coming out of Sage, and you can do automated generation of letters. So it's personalized. There you see, this is to Pick and Pay. It would have that. I can then either send the mail or automate it being sent, and it will run one by one through all of my debtors and create these letters. I can then, in this case, it's all still manual because I want the email to be written with the invoice numbers and all of that, but I want to still be able to actually look at specific examples in here that I want to do. Now we can connect additional things on here like WhatsApp, or we can even connect a call agent to go do that. Another interesting one that I think could be quite helpful would be something like VAT returns. Again, here you would connect to your bookkeeping system, you would program the rules in, and you would actually do have the agent check everything, do all the recons, make sure that everything is posted in the correct area, and then there could be specific findings that we want to first interrogate. We want to either reverse the duplication, in this case, we want to add that, and it would literally go posted in Xero. So from where we build the basic agents to where we start using them in a production workflow to where it's hidden behind a custom UI, this is the evolution. And the goal here is very simply to ensure that our users and our customers and our employees can now spend less time on administrative tasks, and we focus more on customer service, human interaction, and those kind of coaching things that will add more value than the more repetitive tasks. This is the beginning of AI agents in terms of workplace. I think this is going to be transformative for all of us. And what we'll probably know, and I know I've said this before, is that today is the dumbest AI will ever be. Make a note of that, because by tomorrow there will be a better, faster, and more accurate model that will do work for us, and it improves almost daily. So these kind of investments that we make in AI agents to do work for us, it only gets smarter as the models powering it improve. So it's a very exciting time for us. And that concludes my practical demo. I'll hand back to Yaki. Thank you.
Awesome. Andre, we had a question here from Bonga. And she asked a twofold question. One is, you guys clearly seem like you know what you are doing. For us less technical users, is the VectorMind team available to set up agents? And then secondly, is Agentic AI included in your standard VectorMind subscription?
Okay, so those are good questions. Thanks. So firstly, we do have an allocation of hours per subscription to help set up agents. Also, part of the purpose of agents is to make configuration far easier than it was previously. So we're hoping that it would eventually be self-service, but for now, we would still allow that. Agents and Business GPT is part of our standard subscriptions. And like I said, the full Business GPT 2 version would probably be live with all customers end of this month. And then agents would be in beta middle next month. And by the end of next month, it would be in full production for all customers as part of the subscription.
Okay, does anybody else have a question? You are welcome to pop it into the chat or into our Q&A section. Maybe we can just give a few seconds for that, and if not, we can end our session 5 minutes early, very efficiently. Nobody? So I guess the messaging was pretty clear. Thank you so much.
Yaki, there is
Ah,
one question
is
from
one?
Rory.
Yes.
Is it possible to set up an agent to respond to Office 365 emails and push the responses to the drafts folder?
You can definitely integrate Office 365, and we did it for a triage ticket system, which goes into a subfolder, so it would be able to go into draft, yes. And that's actually quite a neat use case. If you can have AI do the first draft of all of your responses, you come in and you go to the draft folder, you review, and then you send. That's actually a really neat use case. Thank you, Rory. But yes. Josh, I think that should be one of our master templates when we deploy agents as a personal email assistant that does exactly that. And you can give it access to knowledge. In other words, you can even have some basic triage to say, listen, should I be responding to this automatically? What would the typical response be? Do I ground it in knowledge or whatever? That could be extremely interesting. So thanks for that one, Rory.
Thank you. Anybody else? These questions are really clarifying some good info. So anybody else with a question? I guess we can wrap it up then. Thank you everybody for making time today. I know everybody's schedule is so busy, and you will be receiving an invite for our May VectorMind Vortex, and thanks for joining.